Mistakes are inevitable in life, and they come in many different forms. However, when you're in a horror movie, a lot of the time your choices will save you, or, the opposite. I'm Tilly from What Culture Horror, and these are 10 exact moments characters messed up in a horror movie. Number 10. A Quiet Place. A world without batteries. Reagan is a deaf girl on the edge of her teens when aliens invade Earth, rampage her homeland and kill pretty much the entire population. But what was her disability in the old world is now her family's strength, when it quickly becomes apparent that the monsters hunt by sound. That's where we originally meet the Abbott family. A while into the invasion, efficiently adapted into the New World Order, communicating only in sign language and walking barefoot on pathways of sand. But for the youngest member of the Abbott clan, Bo, it's a little harder to understand. While out scavenging, Bo finds a toy rocket that Dad, Lee, grabs just in time before its obnoxious sound effects start. Ripping out the batteries, Lee returns the toy, but before the family leave the store to go home, Reagan slyly returns them, smiling with good intentions at her younger brother while shushing him. Unfortunately for Big Sis, this turned out to be the worst decision possible. Poor Bo clearly doesn't understand the severity of that shush, because at the first opportunity, he switched that bad boy on. The family look on with horror as Lee rushes to his youngest to try and beat the monsters to him, only to be too late. And we quickly see the realization fall on Reagan's face. She's made the biggest mistake of her life, and she's killed her brother in the process. You just can't catch a break if you're a 12-year-old girl called Reagan in a horror movie, can you? Number 9. The Babadook. Not the right story. The whole world has participated in story time at some point in our lives, whether as a child or an adult doing the storytelling, and I think therefore we can all agree on one thing. If a book turns up on your bookshelf and you have no idea how it got there, you don't read that book to your child. You start asking questions. Where has this book come from? Did you bring it home from school? Did a stranger give it to you? Etc, etc. You wouldn't just start reading the thing, and you certainly wouldn't continue reading when the creepy pop-up book starts to make you feel uneasy. Yet how was Amelia meant to know the extent of her mistake? We see the argument all the time that we cannot expect our horror movie characters to know that they are in that kind of film to act accordingly. But even without the awareness of the horrors you are about to bring forth, as a mum, you really wouldn't read aloud a creepy book that you hadn't bought. Because of Amelia's mistake, her small family becomes haunted, possessed, and isolated by the Babadook as he attempts to rip the two apart in his sick way for the rest of the movie. Number 8. Geralds Game. Keep the key a little closer. In the movie Geralds Game, there are many things wrong with the way Gerald attempts to pursue his sexual fantasy. First of all, he goes about enacting his fantasy without informing his wife Jessie what he's about to do, meaning he does not get proper consent. He also fails to agree a safe word with Jessie. Her pleas for him to stop are completely dismissed in the roleplay, and then he refuses to uncuff poor Jessica when she asks him calmly, deciding to go ahead and make his roleplay a sick reality. But all of this cannot be considered a mistake Gerald made to his own detriment after he suddenly died. No, these sick choices were to spite Jessie and Jessie only. The big mess up for Gerald, the one that cost him his life and left him a sticky, delicious meal for a wildly starving stray, was leaving the handcuff keys in the bathroom. If Gerald hadn't been such a sicko, sorry, no judgment. If Gerald hadn't been so wrapped up in his own needs, shall we say, maybe he'd consider sticking the keys within reach of his wife. If the keys had been next to Jessie, maybe she'd have been able to escape her cuffs with some flexible wrist movements, call an ambulance and a medic that could have got him before he took his last breath. All of this is a big maybe, but it's a better shot than what he gave himself in the movie. Number 7. Ouija Origin of Evil. Maybe don't let your child make business decisions for you. Being a single parent is hard, as this list has already taught us. They're exhausted, irritable, and they'd probably go to anyone for a bit of help or advice. Well, maybe not anyone. Because taking career advice from your 15-year-old daughter doesn't really seem like a smart choice. Then again, sharing a business with your 2 kids isn't a great idea to begin with, but for Alice Zander, this seems to be the only choice. When her husband passes and her psychic con begins to grow stale, Alice looks to her eldest daughter for some ideas to spice up the family business. When Lena nonchalantly suggests an Ouija board as a brand new gimmick, Mother Alice puts less than a second's thought into the idea, and that is the moment that Alice messes up. While trying out the board, she unwittingly invites an evil spirit into their home and into her 9-year-old daughter Doris. The family then continues to use and abuse the board in an attempt to contact the dead patriarch of the family, and each time Doris gets a little bit more taken over. Overall, Alice exhibits some real bad parenting in this movie, but it all started with that original mistake. Do not bring an Ouija board into the home of your vulnerable children. Number 6. Host. Leave your fake demons at the door, Gemma. People love to mess about with their mates. Wind them up, prank them, scare them, you name it. Especially us Brits, as we struggle to take anything seriously. And that was the issue that Gemma of the movie Host ran into when she accidentally summoned a demon via Zoom. Host follows a group of friends on a video call with a psychic that can communicate with the dead. While the group leader Hayley respectfully follows the orders of Salem the psychic, the rest of the friends take secret shots and giggle silently at the ridiculousness of the situation. But it's Gemma who takes it too far. While the group are silently waiting to be contacted by the other side, Gemma gasps dramatically. Apparently she feels something, bringing up a story about a friend from school who committed suicide. It isn't until Salem drops out of the call that Gemma sheepishly reveals that the whole thing had been some childish prank. From there, things start to go haywire. Objects start moving, tech starts to go awry, and one by one the friends are tormented and brutally killed. We find out towards the end of the film that by making up a spirit during an open seance, Gemma unwittingly invited a demon in, taking the form of her make-believe spirit. The girl messed up big time, but perhaps her judgment was clouded by all of those sneaky shots. Number 5. Hereditary. Let them not eat cake. Being a nut allergy sufferer is definitely a full-time job when you grow up, but when you're a kid, well, the responsibility to keep you safe from harm goes to the adults around you, your parents or guardians, your teachers, and even your older siblings, who should be responsible enough to protect you. Unless, of course, your brother is Peter. Hereditary is a movie about a crumbling family struggling to deal with the death of their estranged matriarch, Ellen. Peter and his little sister Charlie had very different relationships with the woman. Peter had grown up without the grandmother in his life, whereas Charlie was practically raised by the woman as her own. The death hit Charlie a lot harder. Because of Charlie's recent struggles, Peter is pestered to bring her along to a school gathering. A school gathering that turns out to be less of a quaint affair and more of a booze-fueled, drug-hazy house party. With cake. Cake that includes a healthy dose of walnuts. Peter, in an attempt to ditch his sister for his crush and her stoner friends, steers Charlie in the direction of the kitchen with the promise of a delicious slice of the cake. That was the moment Peter truly messed up. Without checking the kitchen or the cake for nuts, he left his sister to her own vulnerable devices. I mean, he was considering nuts, but more his own than the ones that could potentially kill his sister. And that mistake ends up costing his sister her life and her head. Not sure which is sadder, Charlie's fate or the fact that she never got to enjoy the God-given earthly delight that is peanut butter. Number 4. Audition. Next time, try Tinder. It's the 21st century. There are many weird and wonderful ways for couples to meet. You can meet online, go speed dating, blind dating, you can date your co-workers, your old school friends, your dog, please don't do that, but I think we can all agree that our first option probably wouldn't be to open up a fake casting call for a movie as a way to find a wife. That's making some leaps even the craziest of frogs wouldn't make, but that's the plan that Shigeharu hatches. And that, my friends, is where he messes up. First of all, if it's not the most conniving way to find a wife, what is? Secondly, how are the girls going to react when they find out that they're not being cast for a film, but the position of a creepy old guy's wife? Well, the girl he chooses is surprisingly happy with the outcome. She's happy to date the man and asks for his love and dedication, to love her only. However, considering he's a man who holds auditions to find a bride, Shigeharu is obviously not going to hold true to that promise. From there, the movie gets pretty sick, and if you don't have a strong stomach, then you should probably just avoid it. Just as Shigeharu should have avoided this whole ordeal, it would have saved him a lot of, trouble. Yeah, let's say trouble. Number 3. Drag me to hell. The customer is always right. Nobody likes working in customer service, and while a bank loan officer isn't your typical customer service job, paying much better than minimum wage and entailing other duties than just dealing with clients, it can wear on you just the same. For Drag Me to Hell's heroine Christine, it is the clientele part of her career that she has always struggled with. When vying for a well-earned promotion, Christine's douchebag of a boss lets her know that her incapability to make hard decisions is holding her back from success. Which is a fair point when deciding who should and shouldn't get a loan. So of course Christine takes that statement as very black and white and manages to become even worse at customer service. During her next meeting with an elderly woman, she quite unreasonably denies her a third extension on her mortgage, something that we get the impression she wouldn't have done usually. This turns out to be the biggest mistake Christine could have made. The elder woman goes into a crazed rage, promising a curse on Christine's life, and later on that evening, after a suspenseful tussle, the lady seemingly follows through on that curse. Christine's mess up leads to 3 days of disturbing torture and ultimately the end of her life because, as the title suggests, Christine is dragged to the depths of hell in the last few moments of the movie. Number 2. Sinister. Moving in or moving out. Ellison is a true crime writer chasing the fame that came with his first novel. His desperation has caused a rift in his marriage, and his children are starting to become isolated from their peers because of his line of work and constant moving around. So his most recent move in this new novel is Ellison's last chance. Selfishly, the man chooses to move his family into the house of a recent unsolved murder, and after finding a box of Super 8 films in the attic, the seemingly normal case turns, well, sinister, when a mysterious figure starts turning up in what appears to be a bunch of snuff films. Now, in a regular horror movie, Ellison's biggest mistake would have been not moving out straight away, but in Sinister, Daddy Dearest's mess up comes in the form of hastily moving the family away after getting too spooked. If Ellison waited, kept to his guns and stuck with the case, he would have received the crucial and revealing phone call from Detective So-and-so in the safety of his haunted home. Yes, safety, because the families from the Super 8s were only murdered after they moved out of their creepy houses into a new one, as Ellison's family has just done. It's with that information that the ball finally drops for Ellison. The figure that has been haunting the old house has gotten what it wanted, using the move to complete its ritual, finally possessing the man's daughter, influencing her to kill her parents and brother while filming it all on an old Super 8 camera. Number 1. The Visit. Do either of you have ID? Going to stay with your estranged grandparents who you've never met, never seen a picture of, or spoken with is a weird situation. Obviously it's not ideal. With that being said though, if things are already going to be awkward, you should probably swap the polite greetings for an exchange of IDs. Siblings Becca and Tyler have a complicated family life, and their mother Loretta has been estranged from her parents their whole life. But Loretta has a new boyfriend, and that boyfriend is taking her on a cruise, so the kids need a place to stay. This seems like the perfect time to meet your long-lost grandparents, right? Now, it's understandable that Loretta had no pictures to share with them. It's understandable that she wasn't up for a FaceTime with the two before sending her kids away. But as a mother, surely you would put some precautions in place to make sure your kids have gone to the right people. If you're sending your children to essentially a stranger's house, you need to double check they've gone to the right place. Maybe have a designated police escort take them to the house, verify the safety of the place, or God forbid, have your kids check the ID of their grandparents.